I want to start this podcast with the truth, not the cleaned up version of my story, not the version that sounds good on social media, the real one. Because the truth is, my life has broken more than once. The first time it broke was at prison. I remember sitting in that cell, staring at the wall, and it felt like time slowed down. There was nothing to distract me anymore. No phone, no noise, besides the people in prison. No people, just silence. And when you sit in that silence long enough, your thoughts get real loud. And I remember thinking, how in the hell did I end up here? Not blaming anyone, not pointing fingers, just realizing every decision I made led me to this moment. And that was a different kind of weight, because when you can't blame anyone else, you have to face yourself. And I didn't like what I saw. And I remember thinking to myself, this is not the man I'm supposed to be. But here's what I didn't understand at the time. I thought prison would fix me. I really believed that. I thought, this wake-up call, I'll never come back here. I'm going to become a different man. And I really meant it. But looking back now, I didn't actually know what it meant to become a different man. I just knew I didn't want this life anymore, and there's a difference. I did rebuild my life. I threw myself into work. I became disciplined in the only way I understood, which was productivity. I worked harder than anyone around me, because in my mind, if I could just become successful, that meant I had changed. That meant I had proved something. That meant I wasn't the same person anymore. But what I didn't realize was I wasn't healing. I was hiding behind achievement. And years later, after I had rebuilt my life, after I had found success, after everything looked grand on the outside, my life broke again. This time, it wasn't a prison cell. It was my marriage. I cheated on my wife, and I remember that moment. It really hit me what I had actually done. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a bad decision. It was a reflection of who I still was inside. And that's what broke me, because I couldn't blame my past anymore. I couldn't say it's because of how I grew up. No, I couldn't say it's because of prison. This time, it was on me. And that's a hard place for a man to get to, because once you see that truth, you can't unsee it. That's what changed my life in the beginning, or started to. But I hadn't changed who I was. I had built a life that looked successful, but I was still operating from the same foundation, the same beliefs, the same need to prove something, the same internal pressure that I wasn't enough. And when that's your foundation, it doesn't matter how much success you build on top of it. Eventually, it cracks, because you didn't rebuild the man. And that's why this podcast exists. Because there are a lot of men out there who have survived chaos, but still feel broken inside. Men who work hard, men who provide, men who want to lead, but something still feels off. Like you're capable of more, but you don't know how to become the man you're supposed to be. If that's you, this podcast is for you. But to understand how I got there, we got to go back to the beginning. I wasn't born into stability. I was born into chaos. Both of my parents were drug addicts. And early in my life, my twin brother and I were separated. Think about that for a second. One life split into two different paths before we ever had a choice. My grandparents took him, but they said they couldn't afford to take both of us. So he went in one direction, and I went in another. I was raised by my 17-year-old aunt and her 16-year-old boyfriend. Two teenagers trying to raise a child. They did the best they could. But life like that creates instability. There was chaos. There was dysfunction. And when you grow up in that environment, you don't realize how much it shapes you. You learn how to survive, but you don't learn how to live. You don't learn discipline. You don't learn structure. Because I had built my identity around success, not around truth. not around discipline, and more importantly, not around God, around proving something. And when a man builds his identity around proving something, he's always chasing, always trying to feel something, fill a void. And eventually it leads to destruction. When my marriage started falling apart, I couldn't blame my past anymore. I couldn't blame my childhood. I couldn't blame prison. This time, it was all on me. And that realization broke me in a completely different way. Because I realized something most men never face. I had escaped my past, but I had not become a new man. And that's where everything started to change, because real transformation doesn't start with success. It starts with surrender. Surrender to truth, surrender to discipline. And for me, surrender to God. And I fought that for a long time, because surrender doesn't feel natural to men like me. We're taught to control everything, fix everything, handle everything on our own. But control is what kept me stuck. And surrender was the first time I actually started changing. Not when I got out of prison, not when I started succeeding, but when I finally stopped trying to do everything on my own. And that's what this podcast is about. This isn't about motivation. This isn't about hype. This is about rebuilding the man, because there's too many men out there right now walking around looking fine out on the outside, fighting battles on the inside. Men who feel stuck, men who feel like they should be further along in life, men who feel like they've wasted years, men who feel like their past disqualifies them. And I know the feeling, because I've lived it. And here's the truth I want you to hear. Your past does not disqualify you at all, but it will define you if you don't confront it, if you don't rebuild from it, if you don't take responsibility for it. And that's why every episode we're going to end with a drill, because information, it doesn't change your life. Action does. So here's your first one. Take 10 minutes this week and write down the 3 biggest decisions that led you to where you are today. Not excuses, not what happened to you, the actual decisions you made. Because rebuilding your life starts with honesty. And if you can't tell the truth about where you've been, you can't build the man you are meant to become. If this spoke to you, share it with another man who needs it. Because there's too many men out there fighting alone. This is built after breakage. And this is where men rebuild. If this episode hit you and you feel like you've been carrying things alone, you don't have to do that anymore. Reach out to me. I read every message.